Hello and welcome to Daily Politics and Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I am Shafiu Suleiman. Thanking you for joining us. Now, discovery of hydrocarbon deposits in the 60s had significantly affected agricultural production in Nigeria, which hitherto employed about 40% of the country's population, and undermined efforts to diversify the economy through industrialization. In the mid-80s, Nigeria accounted for about 180 functional textile mills, which cumulatively employed about 1 million people at that time. Nigeria also accounted for 60% of textile capacity in the whole of West Africa. Again, Nigeria was making an inroad into the automobile industry with assembly plants such as Peugeot, Steyr, Volkswagen, amongst others, producing cars, trucks, and buses from completely knocked down parts. All of these have become history due to unfavorable government policies, lack of adequate incentives to investors, power and infrastructure deficits, amongst others. It is against this backdrop we'll be revisiting an ambitious industrial revolution plan embarked upon by the Gov't Jonathan administration in 2014 with a clear-cut roadmap to reverse the trend. It is also in line with the recent efforts of the President Bola Tinubu administration to revive the ailing economy through economic reforms and foreign investment drive. That we have in the studio Muhammad Arab Kolo. He is a former project manager and governance advisor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Also joining us via Zoom is an academic who I will introduce as soon as we get linked to him. You know, he's joining us all the way from Birnin Kebbi, the Kebbi State capital. Together, we'll be looking at these issues very closely. But before we commence the conversation, let's take a short break. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Now, while we try to get connected with Professor Tukur Baba, you know, joining us from Kebbi, it's a spokesperson of the Area Consultative Forum. Here in the studio, just like I said earlier, we have Muhammad Arab Kolo.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me in your studio.
Right. Now, looking at this very ambitious plan, you know, by the then Jonathan administration, initially it was a 5-year plan, and then it was designed to be reviewed. And of course, the aims and objectives are also very clear. The need, you know, to place Nigeria on a large-scale industrial revolution, so to speak. Now, but all of that seems to have been jettisoned, you know, after that administration left. With all, I mean, the importance, if you like, and the necessity of what it holds in terms of guaranteeing a prosperous future for Nigeria. I'm sure you must have, you know, followed this plan to some extent. What can you make up with? I mean, how do you think, you know, jettisoning it has affected, you know, the desire for industrial growth in Nigeria?
Thank you once again. We shouldn't say it's jettison.
Okay, completely, right?
Completely, exactly.
Okay.
Because this industrial revolution plan is pivoted on our long-term development agenda, because if you remember very well, we started with Vision 2010. When eventually we came into this new political era in 1999, Vision 2020 was revisited, reappraised, and represented as Vision 2020.
That's right.
The aim is for us to be among the 20 most industrialized nations by 2020. And a plan is a mere wish. And as usual, where you fail to attain your noble goal, what do? You go back and take stock and learn from your experience, carry out SWOT analysis. Where are your area of strength? Where are your area of weaknesses? Where are the threats, opportunities? You now maneuver around those, your analysis, capitalize on your success factors, repeat them the more, and come up with mitigating effect to overcome your weaknesses, take advantage of opportunities, and see how you can overcome your threat and you move on. So that plan actually is not jettisoned, but rather it was
re-examined, reintroduced,
passed forwarded. I think it is repackaged to become Vision 2035.
Okay, 2035.
So we are still on course, and some of the success factors of that exercise is what you're witnessing today, like the Dangote Petroleum Refinery is a product of that vision.
I understand.
The Dangote Cement is another one. And all those newly car assembly plant, Nissan and Jack and the rest of them from China are all outcome of those the basic plan. Okay. So I won't say it is jettison, but
so we're on track, if I understand your position.
Yes, my position is.
But then
only that we need to do more.
Now, then Nigerians will also want to believe that, or rather would want to discuss, if you like, the impediments, because we're talking about industrial revolution, you know, and then there is no way you can have proper development, you know, continuous development without re-industrializing. Nigeria as a nation today is battling, or rather is grappling with so many challenges, especially talking about the dwindling value of the naira and so on and so forth as a result of lack of industrialization. We are largely a consumer nation. When we have comparative advantages that we should take advantage of, and that's what the plan is talking about. Leveraging our, you know, comparative advantages in sectors, and these are key sectors that we are mentioning in that plan, talking about agro-allied, you know, sector, manufacturing, you know, iron, I mean, what do you call it, steel development, and so on and so forth. What were the challenges, the threats, specifically, you know, related to the northern part of the country, where this industrial deficit, if you like, or tsunami is more prevalent?
Unfortunately, the North remained predominantly an agrarian society. We are good in producing raw materials. But as Northerners generally, we have our own weaknesses. We don't know how to come together and establish an industry amongst ourselves. Most of our business are solo, unlike what prevails in other parts. For instance, like in the Southwest. Even Igbos to a larger extent, they are just like the Northerners. But those who are good in coming together to promote common interests, predominantly are the Yorubas. And they are trying in that regard. But predominantly, unless and until the North decide to take the space into its hand and come together and decide to invest in, in industry and commerce, because the market is in the North. And the outlet also still in the North. Most of the things produced in the South come to the North.
That's where the market is.
Why the market is, why we could not consume. The North also provide the leverage to move it outside even Nigeria and sell it.
For value, and in most cases for value addition.
Yes, without any value addition, other than just we receive, we are just middlemen. That's what we largely do. Unfortunately, the greatest challenge to my mind is actually not even the industrialization, but today North is even losing its ground on even the production itself. In most states today, you cannot move far from the state capital. You cannot go deep into the hinterland to farm, produce your farm produce and bring it. Either it is stolen or it is eaten by animals. Whichever one, and we know the problem, so we need to address them squarely.
Well,
we have to make progress.
I think at this point, I would like to bring in Professor Tukur. Professor Tukur, thank you for joining us all the way from Birnin Kebbi.
My pleasure. Good evening.
Right. Okay. You've had Malam Muhammad talking about some of the comparative advantages, with regards to the Industrial Revolution 2014, which was designed primarily, to spur industrial revolution, or trigger industrial revolution in Nigeria with specific targets to comparative advantages such as agro-allied potentials and so on. And just before I brought you in, he was talking about how the North is losing grounds, not leveraging or not being part or taking active part in this drive. As a result of peculiar challenges we know. Let me get your perspectives. Why is Nigeria finding it difficult to re-industrialize?
Well, the major factor is actually historical, funny enough. And it has to do with our relationship with the industrialized world. You have to go back about 250 years, especially with the advent of European colonialism. European colonialism was itself in part spurred by industrialization. When they had produced mass goods and they needed markets overseas, after exhausting the internal market in Europe, and they also needed source of raw materials. And one of the places to do that was to dump the goods in the non-Western countries and to pick up the raw materials. Instead of setting up industries, cottage industries that would process these raw materials, they prefer to take them overseas. So that was the foundation of our underdevelopment or lack of industrialization. And in fact, when you look at societies like India, like Africa, when the colonialists came, they actually stopped and tried to do everything they can to kill those indigenous industries that were coming up. In northern Nigeria, for example, they placed tax on all locally manufactured goods, but European goods were traded freely. This is to encourage you to shun the traditional products for the European products. In India, that involved the killing of the silk industry, which was worth billions and billions of naira. There, in this process, we became producers of raw materials. And with the neo-colonial setup, even after independence, it became very difficult to move out of that cycle of being raw material producers on the industries house. What that meant was they did not develop indigenous capacity for transformation, industrial transformation of the society. So that this thing continues until today. It's much more obviously complex than just this, but this is the root. This is the root of this was the root of the problem. And it will go on until we take steps to encourage one, entrepreneurial spirit in our people, two, the spirit of rationalization, because industrialization is in two components. There is the software, which is the very ideas, such as the very ideas we have, such as what to do, rationalization, and so on. And the other one has to do with technology. And what we need are intermediate technology that will not take us further to heavy industrialization and so on. But the point is, without breaking that historical impediment to internal growth, it will be very difficult. Of course, not impossible, but it will be difficult to be free to industrialize because it's not in the interest of those who have arrested our development in the first place.
Okay, but then agreed, it has its historical roots. But we had in the post-independence, if you like, those who were in the saddle, who had the position of leadership, were proactive in terms of, designing or coming up with strategies to take advantage of this raw materials that we are talking about. For instance, at some point we have 180 textile mills alone. I mean, employing almost a million or over a million people. And these industries gradually, disappeared almost to a zero level. A substantial number of them were actually domiciled in the north. The Kakuri textile industry, hub is there, the Sharada, the Funtua, and a number of them. At what point we begin to lose them? What is it as a result of the policies, or is it as a result of the deficit in terms of what they require to remain alive? What was the challenge?
The challenge is everything you have listed. First of all, government policy to encourage industrialization was lacking. There has been a half-hearted and at best just lip service to industrialization. That's one. Two, it has to do with the obvious power supply challenges. There is just no way you can industrialize without steady, reliable power supply. That's one factor. The other factor also has to do with competition from overseas. Those who have already set up, they have the machinery, they can move faster, they can produce cheaper, they can sell here. So that was another factor. In our case, the oil boom is conventionally blamed for making us lazy, so to speak. Lazy in the sense that we're all looking towards oil rather than using the oil revenue to transform production away from agriculture or away from manual labor to using fossil fuel to transforming production, expanding the local market. What we have is the international market coming to depress the local market. The effect of Chinese textile manufacturers on Kano and Aba, for example, whereby the products coming from China are much cheaper. They produce and sell at a much cheaper price. So people found that, it's the local production is too expensive. And these overseas products they come aggressively, such that before you know it, you just prefer it. I understand common shada, the Chinese can produce any type you like. I understand that they're even getting involved, trying to get involved manufacturing cars. I once walked into a Chinese store, and you had everything from rubber slippers to the face cap to toothpick. And they are all China. And I turned and asked my friend, my God, when are we going to develop everything you need in your body, from the rubber slippers to sponge for your body to T-shirts and everything? If you see that, it's all made in China. So where is the room for our own production? One, there is our production became very expensive compared to China. You fight power supply challenges, water supply, almost everything you need to set up an industry is in short supply. China produces it in the night, so to speak. So a lot of factors. The other one has to do with itself, education. We are still far, far from where we ought to be in terms of adopting modern secular education, teaching our children the principles of science and organization, so that the thinking moves away from tradition to rational thinking, and so on, breaking dependency and so on. So it's a combination of factors: government policy, international trade and exchange, lack of education, and so on. So it's a whole set of factors that are weighing us down. Yeah. And we cannot, of course, tackle them all at a time. Yeah. I will suggest that the first place to look is education. The second place is education. The third place is science education. And then, of course, intermediate technology that will relieve people of labor on the farm so that they produce more, they have more to sell, and then the industries, cottage industries will come up and offtake. And so that instead of selling raw materials, we do value added. We add some level of processing so that we just don't sell the raw materials. We begin to gain the value chain. I read an article which said that the cocoa farmer in Nigeria sells cocoa, say a unit at the equivalent of $1. Nestle, that manufactures chocolate, makes about $20 out of every $1 of cocoa they buy. And they don't grow a seed of cocoa in Switzerland, where Nestle is. It's all West Africa, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Ghana, and of course Brazil.
Right. Talking about value addition, Professor, which is very key. I think that's what you're trying to highlight there. And of course, some measures have been taken, so to speak, to reverse this trend in line with this industrial revolution plans and so on. For instance, we're talking about the collapse of industries, especially in the northern part of the country, largely due to lack of power generation or supply. Again, a number of industries rely on the LPFO, they call it, especially the textile industries. And there was, if you like, a blockade, so to speak, or the inability of the only refinery in the north, to function at that time, providing this needed supply to the industries. Efforts were made at some point to come up with independent power plants. For instance, in Kaduna, I know of a 2.5 or 215 thermal power plant, which was situated in Kudandan and thereabout. Again, so all of this were done perhaps to resuscitate some of these ailing industries. Today we're talking about the AKK, that is the Ajaokuta Kaduna Kano pipeline, gas pipeline. The idea is to power the industries and so on. As per northern groups, how much of engagement are you putting to get the key actors, especially the leadership at the subnational levels, to come to terms with the reality of the fact that the current challenge in the north, talking about insecurity, was a byproduct of the collapsed industries? How much of engagement is the ACF putting to reverse this trend?
Oh, yes, the ACF is soon coming up with a blueprint of what we think is the pathway for development in the north. But I can assure you that some of the state chapters are already moving in that direction. 1, skill acquisition. 2, IT training for our people. 3, paying attention to agriculture. 4, organizing producers into cooperatives. 5, dealing with supply inputs, supply bottlenecks, and so on, with more emphasis on private sector organization. And then, of course, looking for government to liberalize the sector so that individuals on their own do not have to depend on government, but they can be organized into cooperatives that will buy inputs, sell products, gain more, and so on. ACF will come up with a big blueprint that will concentrate on what we are able to do, what we will be able to do for ourselves, given the resources at our hand.
Right. Okay, back in the studio, Malam Mohammed, you've had Professor talking about some of the interventions, some of the efforts they're making, to galvanize thoughts around the need to key into this industrial revolution. But we are also aware of the fact that there have been a number of challenges, if you like, slowing down efforts to take advantage of this. For instance, the present administration, president is, some will say, John Keating around the world, trying to get investors to come into the country. Earlier, you're talking about the fact that you cannot be productive, especially in an atmosphere of insecurity, for instance. We're talking about agro-allied potentials in the north, but then production becomes an issue because farmers cannot even go to the farms.
Yeah.
That's one. Again, part of the components of the Industrial Revolution plan was also to leverage on steel development, iron and steel development.
Yeah.
And we have the Ajakuta rolling mill still lying fallow with its capacity, to change the tide in terms of providing employment opportunities and in terms of generating revenue for the country. Why is this happening?
Thank you once again. I think the professor has given us the answer. But usually in my own ways, I don't lament. I would rather look into issues squarely, judge myself, where have I gone wrong? We have been emphasizing on energy, as if energy is the sole factor of production.
But it's key.
It's key.
Without
I
energy,
agree with you.
You cannot drive
yes,
industrialization.
You can. But at the same time, the world is evolving. The textile mill of those years, today they are extinct. Even if you have them running, if you don't have the right attitude to reject them and move with technology, you will end up actually getting out. Because now you have production lines that are not more than this table before us.
Yes, technology, and in terms of, like Professor has said.
Yes, in terms of productivity, is more yielding, giving a high yield than the long one, which is a mainframe edge to edge of your room. So these are the reality. Averagely, an average Nigerian, when you give him an opportunity, he feels the office is there for him. He doesn't know he's in an office to give service, to render service, and he's to look into his means of production. How best can he? And his always eye should be on the technology that is replacing what he has. I managed a very small portfolio when I was in service. The gym it ran on servers. Do you know the server every 3 years, the generation changes. You either go with the change or you remain where you are, you pay higher and more in terms of maintaining your outdated technology, and it's sometimes it is even cheaper for you to go with the new technology than to continue with your older one.
Okay,
these are the reality that you face. So as much as we agree there are challenges of insecurity, there is challenge of power, there is challenge of this. Let's borrow from the Indians he mentioned. I was in India for 3 months course when I was with the bank. And what they call cottage industry is slightly different from what you call cottage industry here. In India...
Is it about nomenclature or about what works for you?
What works for you. So in India, if you, a factory that makes T-shirt, for instance, those who make the collar of the arm, different industry. The neck collar, different. Those who make the button area, different. Those who make the left side,
there's a value chain.
There's value chain. So that one shirt has been broken into maybe 10, 15 pieces.
And each has its own industry.
Its own industry. They produce, somebody's duty is to collect and sew them together. Somebody's duty is to just package them. This is how they do. For auto industry, they break down the motor vehicle into pieces. A motor vehicle has maybe 1 million components. Each of the component is an industry of its own. Not more than 3, 4 people. This man makes bolt and nut. This man makes the door mat. This one makes the door handle. They go around.
Gives room for specialization.
Yes. And in that case, when you break it down like that, the need for energy, the need for security, the need for specialization, you have broken that chain already. If the vehicle outlook changes, you just change few foundries and you are good to go. This is how life is. But averagely, we have wrong attitude. And I agree with the professor when he mentioned we should look into our educational system. We're all graduates of Nigerian university. We graduate without knowing what to do other than joining public service or getting somebody employing us. Whereas those who study abroad, they are taught on self-sustainability. They work toward working for themselves. It is only those who cannot afford it, who cannot get the loan to start on their own businesses. They are the one who venture into going to take employment with government. Government is the last resort. While here, government is the first point of call. And that's why we have so many graduates, yet they are not employed.
We're talking about being competitive, if you like, competitiveness. And each time we want to make comparative analysis, we bring in countries like India, like China, and the rest of them.
Yeah.
And yet, we don't demand for leadership accountability, or we don't, push for the need for our leaders at various levels of government to also provide the needed incentives. Because those countries in the, factories, or rather manufacturers in those countries strive because they have an enabling environment. In our case, you invest, for instance, in textile manufacturing, and yet you don't have power, you don't have water, you don't have infrastructure to even move the raw material, and yet how can you compete? So
let's go on self-retrospection. Those monies, are they being voted, or they are not voted at all? The monies are being voted. When you look at our budget, funds have been provided to ensure that those industries are working. It is the attitudinal issue which the prop brought. You cannot grant somebody certificate or recognition as a graduate. First, you have to find him worthy in character before and learning. If he has no character, he's not supposed to be certificated as a graduate to come and work. We are all Nigerians. Those our leaders are not dropping from heaven. We know them. We know ourselves. They're either our younger brothers or senior brothers or our uncles, our aunties. But because the value system is bad, that's why I go with the proposal: improve on your educational curriculum. Let your education be one that teaches nationalism, patriotism, selflessness, and if that is done, it is only then when you invest in education. Money meant for education is not diverted to go and build private school. When you invest in housing or road or anything, the money will not be diverted. Once you address issue of corruption, the greatest vein of our underdevelopment, I bet you whatever you want is going to work. All those countries that you are citing as a shining example of development, they don't have the level of corruption we have here in Nigeria. And this corruption is because we don't have good educational system, we don't have good value system. What matters most to parents, to anyone who is close to when you are given leadership position, is what can you bring to the table, and that's all. Right. So as much as we are addressing our industrial revolution 2014, the revolution, as I told you, is yielding some positive results.
Yeah, you talk about some of those.
Unfortunately, is subdued by those corrupt tendencies. Today, if you go out to your studio, you have the tallest building. Just look around. Abuja is built to this magnitude. I was in Abuja from 1989. Most of these places were bush.
That's right.
Today, they are city center. Where did we get the money? Have we ever conducted integrity test on our rich men? What business yielded this level of income for you to the extent that you invested so much in this property, so much in this, you have a private
That
airline.
is for those that have invested. What about those that have looted the money and taken it away?
So you can see, so let's remain focused, and let's see how we can overcome this challenge by investing in education, by investing in counseling each other, going on orientation. Offices should learn to food service delivery first before anything. After getting the service delivery right, it's not enough, because satisfying your customer is function of experience and expectation. Nigerians are becoming more experienced. They're expecting more good things of life, and therefore it is our duty at the same time to improve on how we address their requirement.
Yes.
So that we can
compete favorably
with any other person.
Okay. Thank you very much. On this note, I think we have to take a break. In case you're just joining us, the program is Daily Politics, and it's reaching you live from Trust Television here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. And today we're looking at rather revisiting, Nigeria's Industrial Revolution Plan 2014 with specific emphasis on why industries are still and comatose, especially in this part of the country. We will take a break. When we return, the conversation continues. Stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us. And now the conversation continues. I have to bring in Professor Tukur Usman Baba. And Professor, we'll be looking at the nexus, between the challenges we're grappling with as a nation, especially also as a region, and what needs to be done, and how this industrialization drive can address some of these problems. Unemployment, that is how it can add value to our job creation strategies, how it can also help address restiveness, the insecurity that we're witnessing today. We agree that it has its own roots, to some of these challenges, the collapsed industries. A single textile in the north, for instance, at that point in time, let's say, for instance, United Nigeria Textile PLC, the UNTL, at some point was had employed over 48,000 thereabout workers, and suddenly it got, it collapsed, if you like, or it closed shop. All of these people would have to find ways of survival, and today we are battling with insecurity. How do you think our governors and the subnationals will approach this issue? Yes, it is a national issue, but then it has also local solutions. Since we are talking about taking advantage of the potentials we have the wind, that is for power generation. We have the water for hydro generation, electricity generation, and so on. What do you make up? How do you rate the efforts, at the local level in terms of addressing some of these problems? And especially, Malam has talked about synergy, the need for these players to come together and approach the issue holistically. How are you rating their collaboration in this respect?
Obviously, the collaboration is very low, ineffectual, and very inadequate. A lot more can be done. First of all, the responsibility of government is obviously to create the necessary environment for business, whatever it is, to thrive. Well, you see, we need to get hold of the power supply problem. We need to get hold of the supporting infrastructure problem, water and so on. This is one. And then, of course, there is the need for capital. I was talking to a banker in Lagos, and we have to be honest with ourselves. Capital is not there. And he said to me, there is an unwritten rule in the banking industry that when you come for a loan to finance a project, chances are, if it's located in the north, you are not going to get it. Maybe 2 out of 10 projects will be financed by the banks. It's a written rule, and of course, everyone will deny it. And this is where I think government needs to come in, to encourage entrepreneurs to form into cooperative, pool resources together, so that government, what it does is to oversee that these resources pulled together are used for the purposes for which they are meant, and not be diverted into the behemoth we call corruption. Corruption is not just in government financing. Corruption can be anywhere, in our private lives and so on. Unless we can get those things right, we're not going to get far. And everything, of course, relates to the values. And he has, your guest has emphasized on that. We need the right values. That is to say, one, we need to know that investment in industrialization is a long-term venture. It's not something you do and see the results and reap the profit in 2 weeks, in 2 years, and so on. And then, of course, conspicuous consumption. A lot of what we try to do, a lot of what our rich people do, it's mostly conspicuous consumption. I visited a friend's house, and he has about 7 cars. And I asked him, how do you maintain those? One is for going out, another is for political rallies, another is for going to wedding ceremonies. I mean, this kind of ostentatious consumption, when a lot of money can be put in small-scale industries to support entrepreneurs, large palatial houses. I think one of our problems is conspicuous consumption palatially instead of investment. The orientation is still consumption-oriented. I mean, that is another one. Two, we need to change our attitude about work as an industry itself. Most of our people collect salaries for 40-hour week. And you sit someone down and ask them to be honest, they will not have worked for more than a day out of the 5-day week. We cannot do that. When I tell my students that in the developed country, you cannot go to work with your cell phone because nobody is going to pay you for talking to your relations, for talking to your friends while at work. You see, the whole attitude at work has to change. We need to be serious about working when we are paid. We need to give value for the salary we collect. When we all go and relax, it will not work. And then you talked about the employment in the industry. Your guest has spoken. Those textile industries in Funtua, in Sharada, in Kaduna will no longer work because technology has changed. You don't need as many people on the machine. As he has said, you know, a small desk is what you need. And not a large machine that will occupy the whole room. The world of work is becoming close. Technology is narrowing space. And so you do a lot more in a small space than you will do with a labor-intensive approach. I think the thing to do is to go for skills, skill training and acquisition, to go for value reorientation, and to go for diversification. The role of government is to provide the atmosphere where all this will happen. And of course, I still go back. Our education from the basic primary school to university is still an education meant for colonial society. You know, it's all oriented towards working, receiving a salary, relaxing, waiting for retirement, collecting retirement benefits, being miserable, and so on. We need to diversify. Technology is changing, and we need to take advantage of this. And this can be done through skill acquisition and so on.
Yeah, Professor, before because we are rounding up, I would like to get your take on this. Looking at the current drive by the President Tinubu administration, trying to woo investors into the country. He's been moving around the country telling investors that to done X, Y, Z, to create an enabling environment. But back in Nigeria, some of us know the challenges, just like we've enumerated, the enabling environment is not there. Some of the incentives are also not there. You talked about the need to empower, investors with capitals. We know how much, banks charge for loans and so on. How do we, make it seamless for investors to come into the country and drive this necessary revolution that we require?
The revolution, in my opinion, is best sustained if it is from inside. The first thing we need to do is to get rid of the insecurity problem. As your guests have said, we need to go back to the farm. But it's not just going back to the farm. For God's sake, our agriculture is still boring, hard, and we need to promote small-scale, medium-scale industries that will relieve people of labor, and so that will increase production, that people will be open to innovations, accepting new things, rather than, our agriculture is still, our agricultural technology is still based on the hoe and the cutlass. For God's sake, that is only one step higher than the Stone Age. We need something that will relieve people of labor on the farm. And this is the first place. And then once we have we begin to get the surplus production, we get into value added. Thank
you very much,
and
Professor.
From there we move. But I don't think we should try to move from agrarian society to a highly industrial. It's something that
Thank you very much.
We'll get caught in the middle.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm back in the studio as we round up.
Thank you.
How do we get it right now that we are having a renewed drive? Very quickly, maybe in 1 minute.
Okay. The first thing is actually we already have industrial zones in Nigeria. So we need to replicate similar activities across the state.
Okay.
The India, entirely I mentioned, you agree with me, energy was not a problem as we have here, but the industrial zone has provided for common facilities, energy, road, affluent system, water, banking, everything is in one location. You walk, everything is shared. Right. It's provided and shared. So that will help us. And finally, you cap it with also the way we want to industrialize industries. So also we need to also improve on our farming technology.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Malam Muhammad Arab Kulu. Thank you very much for talking to us on Daily Politics. We appreciate your perspectives. We also appreciate Professor Tukur Usman Baba for his informed perspectives on this very topical issue. We appreciate you, sir. And on this note, viewers, we come to the end of today's Daily Politics. We do hope you found the conversation engaging and informative. Be sure to join us on Daily Politics Live, airing every weekday, and also our special packages on Friday, during which we open our telephone line for you to comment on national issues. Once again, I'm Shapiu Suleiman. Thanks for watching.